Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff. Today we have a quick tips video for you on how to get this to look a bit more like this if there's no paint masks commercially available on the aftermarket. So if you've never made your own paint masks before, I'm going to show you 3 different methods of doing paint masks. They're all similar, and I typically will use all 3 of them on the same model because they vary to suit the varying needs of masking. 2 of them you can see here, the strip method and the complete fill method. And then I have a 3rd method, but we'll do them one at a time, take you through them, and then you can understand how we do it. Let's look first of all at what you need in the way of basic tools to do the job. First thing you're going to need is some masking tape, and we all know the tape that you need. You need that. It's nice and thin, it's strong, and it's what a lot of paint masks are made out of, although clearly you get a lot of vinyl masks these days. Various thicknesses help depending on what it is you're glazing. We're going to be cutting these up anyway. I don't tend to use sheet because the bigger it becomes, the more creases and stuff you get in, and it just becomes a bit difficult to work with. So that's the first thing you need, some masking tape. Scissors for cutting your masking tape. Tweezers, 2 pairs can be really handy. Cocktail stick. Knife with a new blade. Some mascol or equivalent masking fluid, and something to apply your mascol with. At a basic level, that is all your tools. Now let's just talk about the knife. It's the only time I replace the blade and start with a brand new blade is when I'm cutting paint masks. The rest of the time, as many people who've been following the channel for a while will know, I tend to sharpen my blades. It's cheaper, it's quicker, and that does the job for me. But when it comes to cutting paint masks, I need absolute precision. So I can't afford to have any small imperfections in the blade. So I always go with a brand new blade. And quite often, I'll take the blade out when I'm finished and put it back in the new blades, ready for next time. So that's really, really important because what we're doing and the quality of the work we do is all going to center around this blade. This is a number 11 blade. So it doesn't have to be a number 11 blade, but you do want a nice point to it. You don't want to use a rounded one or something like that. I find this is the best blade. Into these, if you've got one of these cutting mats is really, really helpful for making paint masks. They come in several different types. I think I've done a tool review video on it, I can't remember. I've also got one that does circles so you can do roundels and things, but in this instance what we're interested in is cutting nice straight strips, which this allows you to do, and that is for our paint method 1. Now if you've not got one of these, do not worry. You can, obviously you've got a straight edge on the edge of your tape, and you can cut your tape down using a small steel rule on your cutting mat. It's exactly the same. This just is slightly quicker and more convenient. What are the 3 methods and what are they used for? Well, the first method that I will show you is a method I call the strip method, and what you're basically doing is cutting strips of masking tape to fill the sections, and you're starting with the edge, and I particularly use that for where you've got very, very thin areas that need to be painted, like here. So you can see these little struts, they're really, really thin. And so it's best to get your masking tape right in against the edge to start with, and then put a strip in. And I will show you all of these methods in a moment. The next method I use is the complete cover method, and I've used that in these two here, and you can see why I've done that. I've got an unusual shape, and so it's actually easier to cover the whole area, and that is why we need different widths of tape. So we cover the whole thing and we cut the mask out all in one. I'll show you that as well. And then the other method uses a combination of strip and mascal, and that has a particular use for things like domes. Now the dome here isn't actually used in the kit I'm building, so we can use this dome to show you how that's done. But yeah, basically we're going to use a combination of strip and mascal to be able to cover off this. Dome shaped like this, you're going to get a lot of creases in your masking tape, and if you buy an Edward mask, for example, you'll see they have splits in it. They approach it in different ways, but what we will do is we'll put a strip around the base and then just cover the rest of it in mascal, nice and easy. But I'm going to show you all three of these methods so you've got a clear understanding of what's needed, and the only other thing you're going to need is a bit of patience and a bit of time, possibly quite a bit of time. Before you start, the first thing you want to be doing is taking your cocktail stick and shaping the point. I've already done it on this side and you can see it's more rounded. We've got rid of the point. The points can be a little bit jagged and sometimes too sharp, and what we don't want to do is rip the masking tape. So what I do is I just give it a bit of a file on a emery board. I've actually only got my reading glasses on, so I've no idea what shape I'm making here. But yeah, we just sand it so it's rounded off, and we have a blunt point. I have a few rules when it comes to making paint masks. The first rule we've already talked about, and that's always a new blade in your knife. The second rule I have is never more than 2 layers of tape. That means one layer and one layer that may overlap while you're putting other bits of tape on. So you can see here, these two windows have got multiple strips of tape on. Both of them have actually got 3 strips on. Where they overlap, there's no more than 2 layers. And the reason for that is the more layers you have on, the more build up you get against the edge, and the more likely you are to get either paint bleeding into the glass or the paint not getting onto the area that you want to paint crisply, and actually end up with not doing a neat job, and then you're cleaning it off and doing it again. So that's why I have that rule. Third rule is don't be too ambitious. It's very tempting to get a piece of tape and whap it down all of here and press it all down, and what will happen is you will get creases in it, it won't sit properly, and it'll end up taking you longer to cut the masks than if you did each individual pane. So for me, it's much better to do one pane at a time, concentrate on one thing at once, and then move on to the next one, than trying to be clever and do a quick job. Invariably, it takes longer to do a quick job than to do a correct job. So on this piece of glazing area here that we need to mask, I'm going to use the strip method, and by that we cut strips of tape, line them up with the 2 edges, and then fill in the middle section, and you can see that's what we've done on both of these. You might be wondering why we don't take this approach on a square one, because surely that's an easier shape. Well, the simple answer is you could, but actually it's quicker to do the strip method than to do the complete cover method. So it's about speed, and when you've got lots of glazing and lots and lots and lots of it, time is important. And that brings me on to my 4th rule, and that's the 2mm rule. I have a rule where any strip of masking tape cut for use on masking has to be a minimum of 2mm wide. And there's a reason for that, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you. So I'm going to start by adding a 2mm piece of masking tape, and I have to admit this is going to be a little bit tricky on camera, but we will give it a go. And what we have to do is line up our edge of the tape against the edge of where we want the masking to stop. Okay, so actually that was pretty good for a first attempt on camera. Then what we do, once we've got it on, is we take our rounded off cocktail stick point and we're just pressing it down and getting it right up into that groove, right into the edge where we're going to want to cut it. Now I do sometimes, depends on the thickness of the tape I'm using if I'm honest, I do sometimes go in with my tweezers as well and just make sure I've got a nice sharp edge. I didn't need to here, I'm just demonstrating a point. So once we've done that, we can go in with our sharp blade and just trim away what we don't need. So we're not really pressing because we don't want to damage anything. We're just running it along the edge and scoring it until we can feel, you can sort of feel that the blade has gone through. There we go. And we should be able to then just lift those away and we've got a nice masked area. It's always worth checking that it's all nicely done. And in this instance, I'm happy that that is all good. So if we now do that with a 1mm piece of tape, you'll see the difference. So I'm going to come in now with a 1mm piece of tape and put that against the edge. And exactly the same process as before, going in with our cocktail stick and just making sure we've got it in all the edges as we want. Now this is where the difference is. When you're using a thinner bit of tape, 1mm bit of tape as I'm doing here, when you come to cut it, can you see what's happening? You're much more likely to drag the tape. Whereas when you've got 2mm, my experience is because the tape is wider and got more purchase on the part, it's less likely to move. And I find that anything under 2mm and you're starting to struggle with the tape moving and you're just making work for yourself. So that's why I have nothing less than 2mm rule. Okay, once you've got your two edge strips on, and like I say, it's a minimum of 2mm, can be as wide as you want. There's nothing stopping you putting just two pieces of tape on there and they overlap in the middle. That would be perfectly fine. But for the purposes of illustrating the point and the method, I'm making sure there's a gap in the middle so you can see what's been done. We're then going to put our last piece of tape on, which is going to fill our gap, and then we can cut our top edges. So it's the same process as before. But we've only ever had to cut the tape on two of the edges. We've not had to cut it on four edges. We've only done the top and the bottom, and we've used the edge of the tape to ensure that we've got a nice straight line. Of course, that only works where you've got a nice straight line. So there we are, done. That is our paint mask done. And as always, just check that everything is as it should be. I've got a little rip there, which is staying behind and will get in the way of the paint. So we'll just remove that. Job's a good one. So that is that area masked off, ready for our paint. And that's as good as any commercial paint mask. Then, when you've got an odd shape, you can use the method I've just shown you, but what you're going to have to do is where you've got the oddness of the shape, in this instance a curve at the bottom of this windshield, then you're going to have to overlap and cut it out. So I find it easier to use a single piece of tape. So this is my second method, the total cover method. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the masking tape on, and then we're going to make it conform to the shape. So it's very similar to what we did first time round. We're going to get our cocktail stick and we're going to work from one end, make sure that the tape is down. You can see the difference where there's air trapped under it and the air's been pushed out. And then we're going to gently trace the edges of the area that we need to mask off. And how well this works is really down to how defined your raised lines are on the plastic part. And that varies dramatically from kit to kit, manufacturer to manufacturer. But in this instance, we're not too bad. So, I think we're ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our blade and we're going to very carefully start from the corner, and we're not pressing, we're just slowly moving along the edge that we've defined and keeping the blade close to the edge, because what we don't want to do is go off in that direction and put a great big cut line across it. That's why we're using a brand new blade, and that's why we're being very, very careful and doing it slowly. Okay. Make sure we've got nothing there causing me a problem. Where you're most likely to have a problem is in the corners, because you're taking the blade off and then putting it back on. So hopefully, if we've done a good job, we should be able to lift this tape off now and leave a mask behind, like so. Simple as that. Okay, the third method is for these much more difficult areas, which like these domes that are going to need masking. So we're going to start by masking the bottom of the part that needs masking off. So we can see there's a little lip there, so we need to be masking up to that edge. And we're simply going to cut a piece of tape to go around there. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this on camera. It's quite a fiddly process, but we'll have a go. So start by finding one point and getting it lined up. Then straighten your tape and slowly work it around. Now remember, this doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to be functional. If you think it's not right, take it off and do it again. There we go. So that is our tape on. Okay, so we're masked up to that line. We've got a nice straight line, but it's difficult. It's not impossible to mask it with tape from there, but you're cutting lots of little pieces out, and it is a little bit difficult. So I find a bit of Maskell is a nice, quick, simple solution to dealing with those odd shapes. And I'm simply going to cover everything that needs to be protected in the Maskell. Now, if you've not used Maskell before, it's a masking fluid which sort of dries rubbery, and then you can just peel it off with a pair of tweezers. It'll dry a sort of a purple hued translucent colour. It's also sticky, and I've already managed to just pull a bit off. What is important is that you go over the edge of the masking tape and seal the masking tape in. We don't want any paint accidentally going somewhere you didn't intend. And again, it's not about looking pretty, it's about being functional, making sure that everything is appropriately covered, sealed. There we go. It's as simple as that. That is my 3 masking techniques. There you have it. That's my quick tip on my 3 different approaches to making your own paint masks. It's not difficult. It's just a little bit time consuming, but actually there's an awful lot of satisfaction about getting it done yourself. And you know, all right, you're saving yourself £2 or £3. It's probably not worth it if there's a paint mask set available, but if there isn't, it's definitely doable. So don't hide it away in the stash because you haven't got paint masks. Get it built. Okay, thanks for looking in. I hope that was useful. You enjoy your modelling, and I'll see you very soon.